Living a New Life, the Sacred Process of Dismemberment. I wrote this a little more than a year ago, at the beginning of another dismemberment process. Here I am into a new year of healing my body and releasing bits and pieces of my past. The process seems to be an ongoing one. It has been my intention to do whatever is necessary to reclaim my true life and to live fully as myself. For that to happen, I will continue to unravel all that isn't true until such time as Spirit no longer calls me to do so. Living my truth is my holy grail and one I will not stop short of. Dismemberment is not a one and done thing. What I wrote a year ago is still applicable to my experience today. Things reveal themselves when I'm ready to see and surrender them, not necessarily in a time frame of my choosing. As 2023 progresses, I'm certain that this process will as well, perhaps intensifying before I'm graced with some reprieve. I hold this experience as a sacred rite of passage and not one to rush through. It's to be savored and appreciated for the tremendous gifts it holds. The following was written as I found my way through this last year, and I'm certain will still be applicable for years to come. I've written and painted quite a bit about remembering myself, but have skirted the depths of what comes before, what must come before. Nothing new can be created without first making room for it to be born. Until now, I hadn't been conscious of how furiously I've been running from the truth of what I feel, the darkness lying beneath the surface, instead believing that I was in a constant quest to find it. It turns out that touching these wounded places in myself is so excruciating that it feels like death by fire. Dismemberment is a classic shamanic rite of transformation. In it, the seeker gives themselves over to a symbolic death in order to have the chance to be reborn anew in a stronger and more empowered form. This is not for the faint of heart. It is not a process to get through with your head buried under the covers. It is meant as a learning, an initiation into a new way of being. Throughout my adult life, I've experienced this transformation a number of times, usually accompanied by a huge and devastating loss. Some lasted only weeks, while others went on for nearly a decade. I remember once saying out loud that I'd felt as if I had lived numerous lives in this one lifetime, barely able to connect the dots from one life to another. At times, I have felt as if I've been reborn while still living in the same body, a completely new person within the same shell. At the time, I had no idea what dismemberment was and hadn't yet identified my path as a shamanic one. Looking back, it's clear to me that I was stating something truer than I knew. I've died and been reborn so many times that the lives I lived before felt like they belonged to someone else. At the turn of this year, I made a declaration, something I do each year with my intentions set for the coming months. I create a context in which to hold every decision I make. Does it support my intention or not? Is this what I'm really up to this year or not? And as 2022 arrived, my declaration was that this was the year to heal my body and follow my heart. My body had already dictated the necessity for change, foretelling the process that was to ensue. I was ill and exhausted from overwork and running myself ragged. What I wasn't yet aware of was the extent to which my health depended upon facing the core issue of my life, the fear, grief, and rage that had been driving me from my earliest years. I thought at the time that I might skate by with some external changes, but I was terribly wrong. My experience tells me that when a declaration is made, everything lines up to support its realization, whether it appears to be that way or not at the time. Things fall apart that need to be shed, and people appear in my life out of seemingly nowhere, as helpers, teachers, or guides of some sort. I receive messages in odd ways, and if I don't recognize them or choose to follow them, they get louder. Whispers turn to shouts. Nudges turn to fists. Gut feelings turn to illness if I don't listen and heed their call. And so it was at the turn of this year. With my declaration made, I was off and running. Sharing my journey was one of the pieces I knew needed to be added, so I began by sending out an email, posting on social media, telling everyone what my intention was. I was clear that sharing the ins and outs of what it was taking to recreate my life and my work was going to be of service to those who read my posts. My intention was to work less and play more, to only pursue creating what I loved. I had so many projects calling to me. I was clearing space for something new to be born. And then the doctor visits resumed and the test results offered no help or hope. I was told they either didn't know what to do or that there was nothing that could be done. I would have to live with my ills because there was nowhere to turn, or the fix might be worse than the symptom it was supposed to address. After years of both traditional Western medicine and alternative therapies, thousands of dollars spent with no results, and in worse shape than when I began, I lost hope. I really lost hope. For the first time since my early years, I questioned whether I wanted to be alive. Sharing seemed pointless because I couldn't imagine who would want to hear what I had to say from such a dark place. I pulled away from everyone. I was in mental, physical, and emotional pain and no way out. It seemed pointless to even try. If I couldn't live a life where I could do the work I love and engage in a life fully, why should I live at all? Hadn't I been through enough to justify giving up? I thought I just might be done this time. I've been in a process with a shamanic practitioner for a while now. When I emailed her to let her know what was happening, she was quick to respond. She reminded me that I was in a sacred dismembering process and that this was a gift. She told me that I would look back on this with fondness once I was through it and not to try to understand or control anything now. My therapist of over 10 years sat with me in my darkness and reminded me of the depth of pain, the grief and betrayal, the abuse and abandonment that I had never fully allowed myself to feel. Once again, she told me that unless I allowed these feelings room to be experienced, to be voiced, and to be allowed the space to be, I would continue to live from them for the rest of my life. Healing was not possible without that. She brought back my awareness of how I have had to survive all of my life and how much of what has happened to me had to be buried to that end. I hadn't had the safety or the luxury of feeling all that I had buried. Survival was my primary focus. Now, with the intention to heal, to create the life and the work that I dream of, I had to feel and feel fully. Anything less than this was no longer an option. At 69, with all that I'm dealing with, how many more chances was I going to get to face what I had to face? Did I want to take this to its end and let it kill me? And so I felt it all. My body was racked with pain. The devastation of loss could not be denied. The rage at myself for not being able to see all of this sooner, save my health, and turn things around when there was still the opportunity to, consumed me. I wanted to kill, to destroy the object of my rage. And it was myself that I was raging against. I stayed that way for a couple of weeks, feeling so dark that I didn't even want to see a glimmer of light anymore. This was a darkness that had visited me many times in my life, and it felt more real than anything I had ever felt. It felt like home to me. Anything other than this was a poor excuse for reality, and I loathed anyone who wanted to tout the healing balm of love and light. As far as I knew, this was who I was, and no one was going to deny it. I wasn't going to deny it any longer. Now I know that the darkness was my truth, the truth that lived beneath all that I ever did or said or dreamed of. It was the truth because that was my experience, and the emotions that came out of it. Those were real, and I denied them so they colored everything else in my life until my health began to break down. I always rallied. I was a warrior, after all, but I rallied with all of that still deep inside. And each time I rallied, I damaged myself more because it was on top of layers of dark, wounded places that were festering beneath. I was eating myself out from the inside and being strong and resilient and courageous on the outside. I was frantically proving that none of this was true, more to myself than anyone else, but others were inspired. They saw my courage and strength and unwillingness to give up. They never knew what was driving me. The inspiration I provided for others gave me more fuel to keep doing what I was doing and more fear attached to stopping the cycle. After all, if I gave in to this darkness, which is how I saw it, then everything I had constructed as an identity would have been proven false. The lies that had caused so much pain as a child would have proved to be true. Though I couldn't articulate any of this back then, it's painfully clear now. The details of what lay beneath the surface aren't important here. We all have our demons, some greater than others. The essence of what I'm sharing is that running from the dark places within leads nowhere except destruction. There's truly nothing to fear in the darkness. It is truth just as much as light is truth. There is no shame in those dark places either. We are flawed human beings, having experiences that wound, scar, and damage us as well as enlighten us. There's nothing shameful about being flawed. I like to say that I am perfectly imperfect. Until now, I said it, but I wasn't able to offer myself the same compassion I feel for others in this truth. It has taken 69 years to be gifted with a dismemberment process that I can be in the midst of and know it as the gift that it is before it's done. I'm going through this aware and awake and willing. I'm ready to feel. I'm ready to let go. In the darkest part of this, I couldn't have written any of these words, but I'm moving through it now and see shadows of hope. The doctors still say there's nothing to be done. I'm still not well. I don't know what's possible given my age and the extent of what I deal with physically, but here's what I do know. I have done the impossible before. After listening to doctors and evidence to the contrary, I have taken hold of my life and created what they said could not be done. I did this long before anyone else had written books about it or even acknowledged that the strange illness I was dealing with at the time really existed. But I knew that in order to be well, I needed my physical strength. I knew that my essence was not that of a sick, weak person. So I made a declaration. I am not a sick person. I am a strong, vital person with some physical ills to deal with. And that declaration set in motion 2 decades of physical strength, resilience, miracles, and contribution to others that I never could have foreseen. I didn't just declare it. I did the work that was needed to build a strong body. I changed my career. I fell down more times than I will ever remember, but I always got up and grew stronger and better from it. I helped countless others do the same through the work I created. I inspired and taught and coached and mentored. And as I did, I grew more aware and more myself until it was time for another dismemberment, one that was to last another decade, the one that led me back to my art. I won't say that this will be the last time I go through this. One thing age and experience have taught me is that if I think I've arrived, I'm most likely only part way. Since my purpose here is my quest for truth, this process will never end. I'm into this one enough to be able to see the wisdom in sharing it. I'm through it enough to have remembered my declaration 30 years ago. I am not a sick person. I am a strong, resilient, powerful woman, and I need my physical strength to get well. The doctors might not believe it. Hell, I might not even believe it yet. But I made a declaration, and my word is law in my world. When I say something, I know it will happen, even though I have no idea what it will look like. It will happen not by fighting my way through this time, but by feeling the extent of what has made me ill, giving it voice and room to have its day, by my willingness to surrender what I thought I wanted to listen to, the truth of my heart, by my willingness to stand in that truth and create from it the life that my heart wants me to create, the life that it wanted so many years ago when I didn't have the capacity to listen, and by sharing my truth with others so that all of my experience is not wasted but is added to the collective quest for the truth of who we are as humans, taking some of the shame out of being wounded and damaged and unfinished beings, just wanting to live.